episode 4 of the remake of Fist of the North Star. What did we think about it? The first thing that I want to say is concerning Heart. That's the main fight that we had in this episode. And remember what we said about Heart, the interesting things that we said about Heart, as in the name of this character, but also a literal heart, or what it represents in the analysis of the classic series, the equivalent episode, which is also episode 4, but then it's very different, isn't it? We talked about this same character. We basically talked about a contrast between this character and Yuria's heart, which is a real heart, and this character is a fake heart. Let's say it's Shin's delusion of what is a heart, what he thinks a heart is. So it's this thing that is gentle in appearance, but in reality is a horrible monster. Now, I had this suspicion in the previous episode because Heart is already introduced in the previous episode, but now it's confirmed. It's that, he isn't really gentle on a considerable level, let's say, because he was kind of kind, let's say, to that barman, but not to his man. He doesn't sound gentle at all. He really is just a monster. Kenshiro calls him a pig, and that is really what he looks like. So I think we lose the interesting things we said concerning this character. These interesting messages, let's say, in this anime, in this remake that we had in the classic series. This also applies to actually what we said concerning episode 3 of the classic series, and also the next ones, I guess, until the end of part 1, because this is pretty much already apparently the end of part 1, even though I guess we'll get, because as far as I'm concerned, 𝙿𝚎𝚅 and Devil Rebirth, these are and the God Army, even though it's called something else, I believe these are canon, I believe. So I guess we'll get these later. I just don't know. But anyway, but I think we lost some things here. But in addition to that, I think Kenshiro's fight against Heart took way too much time. Remember, in the classic series, it was very short, right? So it was just a matter of he punches Heart, it doesn't work, then he takes a hit, he takes damage, and he comes back and defeats him. Now, in this remake, it's like it takes so much time, and you may think that it's good for a reason, which is that Heart is introduced as the martial artist's killer or something, right? So you may think, oh, maybe that makes sense actually, right? So Kenshiro has some trouble. Well, if you want to go in that direction, then Heart is strong against, he's especially dangerous to martial artists, let's say. Okay, so I guess you have to find a solution, some special solution, right? As in, my martial art doesn't work against him. That's what Heart says. The Hokuto Shinken doesn't work on him. So I guess you have to find a special solution, a non-Hokuto Shinken kind of solution or something. I don't know. But basically what Kenshiro did is that he did the same thing as in the classic series, so he just kicked him more. And it seems that he struggled more against Heart than he struggles a little bit against Shin sometime later in the same episode. And that's the thing, it's like he struggled too much against Heart. It was too long and not that interesting. So, but now I want to say something positive concerning this episode, as there is always that positive little thing that gives us some hope. Again, in this episode, I want to talk about the past when Shin tortures Kenshiro and captures Yuria. Kenshiro says something very interesting. So they're in front of, before Shin comes, the grave of the master, and then Kenshiro says the same thing as in the classic series. He says, "Master, we're going to be all right because I have the Hokuto Shinken, but most importantly, I have Yuria." And then the last thing he says that he didn't say in the classic series before Shin comes is, he tells Yuria, "Let's go and live in some calm place." Now, if you watch the whole Fist of the North Star, the whole classic series, and then you watch this remake. And of course, we talked about these in the analysis of the classic series, that Kenshiro actually made a mistake, and it's actually a dude who's too gentle. He's not just this badass who's heartless, emotionless. No, he's actually way too nice, and he made a mistake because he put Yuria above, and he has to become meaner, let's say. If you missed this, then hearing this in this remake should shock you. Kenshiro wants to live in a calm place with his fiancée? So let's say this is proof, if I may say, of what we said concerning the classic series, because of course in the classic series it's implicit. Now, implicit is stronger, but explicit is clearer, I guess. So Kenshiro saying this is some sort of proof that he hasn't in his mind accepted the responsibility of protecting the code of the Hokuto Shinken yet. So this is very good, and as if he was sent by God or by the master, Shin comes and captures Yuria, that thing that you live for. But again, it's like we every time we have this one cool thing, like in episode 1, which is Kenshiro gaining meaning, because we said that the voice in Lin's heart in episode 1 was Ken, but we don't have the absence of meaning theme. We don't have the theme of absence of meaning, so we understand that within this mental chaos, right, this existential crisis, if I may say, then he gains faith and meaning. We don't have this. And so, back to present and back to some negative things, actually, the biggest flaw of this episode, it's that it really seems that Kenshiro's obsession, the obsession that he learned thanks to Shin, that we pretty much never saw so far, by the way, because this is only episode 4. How do you develop a character in 4 episodes? And he's already against Shin, and he says, I learned obsession and faith thanks to you. But the way it's represented, it really seems that his faith and obsession, these things that he learned from Shin, are to get Yuria back. But remember what we said in the analysis of episode 22 of the classic series. We said that Kenshiro's obsession and faith is not in getting Yuria back, it's in protecting the code of the Hokuto Shinken. And we developed this. And that made him stronger than Shin, because Shin has obsession to get Yuria. Now, Kenshiro has, let's say, faith in something that is more noble, transcendent, as opposed to just being happy with your girl, which you shouldn't do. If you're Kenshiro, of course. And maybe us too, but anyway. But then in this remake, unfortunately, we lose this whole thing. So these are the things that I wanted to say. There's a last thing that I want to say, that I wanted to say in the previous episode, actually. I introduced it, but I said these general things about the anime, right? So it's actually, I realized late, let's say, that we're going to get this in the beginning of every episode. It's something that I briefly said in episode 2. I thought it was proper to episode 2, but it seems we'll get this in the beginning of every episode. You know, that little introduction sequence where the narrator says that the Hokuto Shinken is progressively disappearing. I thought it was a little flaw, but it's going to be repeated for the rest of the anime. But also the 1,800 years. And remember, I said something like 2,000, 1,000, why? And then I thought it's a detail, but it's going to be repeated every time. And so I want to address that now very briefly, because actually I already have a video in mind, let's say, and I wanted to talk about this a long time later, because it's like an off-series episode. It's a general thing to say about the anime, and there are many things to say, but I'm going to do this very briefly. 2000, pretty obviously actually has a meaning, right? 2000, we're in 2026, 2,000 years ago. It was the time of someone, and there is quite explicit reference to him. Kenshiro is already, we could say that he represents him in a way. But then also, it's in 199x, almost 2000. How far are we from 2000? Well, maybe 10 years, because it may be 1990, but it may be 1 second. We don't know, because it's such a world of chaos that we even forgot the notion of time. So, and 2000, the last thing I'm going to say, but really I'm going to develop this later, is 2000, and 1000 is like a millennium. It's the biggest time frame that has a name as such, a millennium, to talk about the history of humanity. And it's 2000. And, well, later in the anime especially, it's going to be about conquering the world and saving the world. So it's the rise of an empire, and it's the fall of it. So I'm going to talk about these later, but maybe you don't touch the 2000. And now it's 1800, and maybe it's some precise reference to something that happened in real life 1800 years ago. Maybe not. Maybe it's just so it's not generic, it's not 2000, it's a bit different. But these things have a meaning. Remember, we talked about Devil Rebirth. His martial art is older than Kenshiro's. Now, Kenshiro practicing a martial art that is 2000 years old is supposed to mean something, and it has real meaning. It matters that it's old, especially because it's tradition. And Devil Rebirth is older, but we talked about that. There is meaning in that. We really developed that pretty well. So these matter. And they mean quite precise symbols, let's say. But now we have 1800. So, but we'll talk about these later. These are the things that I wanted to say concerning this episode. And let's see what we'll get in the rest of this remake.